Hello gang, welcome back. I'm on the Roman field. I've noticed that the farmer is here with his tractor and he's turned over a lot of it. It's all a bit mulched up. Can you see that behind me? So I'm just going to go along the tractor tracks and just have a look and see if he's turning anything up. You never know. And like that, look, my new jacket of many pockets. Thank you very much, Mrs. Searcher. Look at that, that's very smart, isn't it? Look, how many pockets does a man need? Right, I shall see you on the very first one. And there you go. There's the farmer chugging about in his blue tractor, feeding the apple trees. And we have got the first find of any significance, which is obviously fashioned in that shape. It's lead, it's either a little weight, could even be a little gaming piece, to be quite honest. It is very tactile. We'll have a clean up and have a better look at that back at the ranch. I think it's just a little weight. Yeah, I'm happy. Good work. Just up, a very nice early Royal Artillery button. That'll clean it nice and it's still intact. Look, I could sew that onto my waistcoat of many pockets. Happy with that. So what do we think? That's late 1800s, isn't it? We've been there before with these things. Yeah, I think that's late 1800s. Happy days. First coin of the day. Obviously a penny, but it's very, very thin. So I should imagine that's quite early. Let's give that a quick clean and see what we can get off of that, if anything. Well, unless I do an hour or so's work on it, I guess we're never going to know. It's a coin. It's an old one. We just don't know how old. Let's go. Let's get some more. Well, I've been wandering up and down the ends of the rows for the past 10 minutes or so, as you can see. Because normally you just get to the end of the poles and you turn around and you go back up a lane. I thought, well, I just do it differently. The ground's so wet, it's like digging in butter. So that's pretty cool. So I just thought I'd have a random run up and down and see what we can see. The old farmer's parked up in the distance, so I'm going to say hello to him in a minute. But that's just come out. I think it says 52. I think it's an old button. I mean, it's really corroded on that side where it will clean up back at the ranch somewhat, but that's pretty cool. What's that, a copper, do you think? Police button? I don't know, pure speculation. There we go, try and get it so we can see it. That's alright, we like that. Happy days. Our second coin of the day. Little Victoria. Trying to work out what actual coin it is, I presume. I think it's high copper content because it's very corroded. But we'll give that a scrub up back at the ranch so we can get a date off of that. Coin number 2, a little Victoria. Lovely. Third little coin of the day. Again, quite thin. Let's give it a little clean up, see if we can get anything off of this. Nothing really off it so far. Definitely Britannia on the back, but you just see the date ends in 5. Could be 1985, who knows. We'll have a look back at the ranch. Coin number 3. Welcome back, gang. Now, I made a schoolboy error. I mean, a basic day one metal detecting error. I waxed lyrical about my new jacket of pockets from the lovely Mrs. Searcher, and I do love my jacket of pockets from Mrs. Searcher. But unbeknownst to me, one of the many pockets had a hole in it. So once I returned home, the only things that were left were the stuff that I put in my finds box, which were these little bits. Yeah. A pewter button. We also found that nice 1810 Royal Artillery button, which I've donated to Tiger Chris. We got a bald Victoria bunhead penny. You can just about maybe not in this light, you can just make out the ghost of the bust of Victoria on that one in certain lights, but evidently not today. So a Victoria bunhead, another Victoria bunhead, there she is, God bless her. And this, which I really struggled to trace and identify on Tinterweb. The one reference I found, it's from the 52nd Regiment of Foot that later turned into the Oxfordshires. And there's only one example that I've found on the interweb so far, and quote, it is, I'm quoting word for word now, I'm reading this, an exceptionally rare officer's example of the 52nd of Foot, circa 1780 to 1790. So that's pretty good, but it's in such a poorly state that it's not going to clean up much better than that, I'm afraid. Exceptionally rare officer's button of the 52nd Regiment of Foot. They had some interesting escapades, but unfortunately this isn't the greatest example of their livery, as it were. So we'll leave that, and we'll have a talk about this fella. There he is, can we see him? That's old George IV. Just about make him out in the light. I thought this was a standard 1p when I found it, 1 pence sterling. But no, there he is, 1825. You can just about see it on the back. Let's have a quick chat about George IV and 1825. So, 1825, they passed something called the Cotton Mills Regulation Act, which meant that it was now law that children under 16 could work for a maximum of 12 hours a day. That's big. 7 days a week, so that's big of them. 1825, London overtook Peking to become the world's most populated city. George Stephenson's rocket, the locomotive, was the first passenger carrying steam train. Although there's a bit of dispute. I mean, there was, where I live in Canterbury in Kent, there was a Canterbury-Whitstable line called the Crab and Winkle line, and there's a dispute as to which one was actually the first. So I think well, the history books say that Stephenson's rocket was the first passenger carrying locomotive. I think our one might have been the first Crab and Winkle carrying one. I don't know. There's not many Crab and Winkles left, so we can't ask them. George IV remodelled Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle during his reign. He was responsible for that. He was also responsible for having a 50-inch girdle corset made to hold his bits and pieces in. He was said to, by the time he was crowned, he was said to be addicted to laudanum. Now, laudanum was a tincture, opium and alcohol mix. So, and he was said to, in order to attend state events, he was said to have needed up to 100 drops of laudanum just to get going. Now, as I sit here now, we are days away from King Charles III's coronation. That's coming up in a matter of days. I don't know how much it's costing, but George's father, when he was crowned, so it was George III, when he was crowned, his coronation cost the country £10,000. Quite a frugal affair, which kind of matched him, if you like. He was a frugal, conservative kind of man. George IV, his wayward kind of son, 213,000, which is equivalent today, roughly, of 23 million. Just for his party. There were people dying of starvation and God knows what else in the streets, and poverty all around the place. But he felt justified in spending 23 million on his coronation. There were some nice quotes about him. I shall read you some of the quotes. Incidentally, his wife Caroline, by the time he came to the throne, he had enough of her, and they didn't grant him a divorce. It's a bit kind of Henry VIII. If they didn't grant him a divorce, and he had nothing much to do with her, and she claimed, you know, the titles and everything else, but she was having affairs, he was having affairs, so it was all a bit sordid. But when she died, she made it quite clear that she thought that he'd poisoned her, surreptitiously, you know, by the back door, and not him personally, but he'd had her poisoned. But nothing ever came of that. Two famous quotes from his close advisors, which I shall read. "A more contemptible, cowardly, selfish, unfeeling dog does not exist," said of the king. That's nice, isn't it? And when he was bedridden, because he had gout, he had something called arteriosclerosis and peripheral edema, lovely, as well as his laudanum addiction and everything else. He took to his bed. He was bedridden. I mean, he was over 30 stone and all of this business. And one of his advisors, quote, said he looked like a great sausage stuffed into the covering, meaning his duvet. And he was, so, you know, it wasn't pleasant when it came before he finished off. And before he died, he was still eating for breakfast. I think I've quoted this before because I find this immense. I find this amazing quote. For his breakfast, just one sitting, pigeon and beefsteak pie, 3/4 of a bottle of Moselle, a glass of champagne, 2 glasses of port, a glass of brandy, followed by laudanum, lots and lots of laudanum. Now that is the breakfast of kings. I don't think I'd be able to function on it. I don't think he functioned on it, but hey, he was a king. Who cares? Cheers for watching, chaps. See you all on the next one. Hopefully we'll have a bit more luck and we'll have a bit more to talk about. See you soon, guys. Well, there you go.